What would you do if your next breath was no longer guaranteed? Dr. Victoria Blake thought she'd escaped her past when she fled London for New York. But when a mysterious gunshot victim crashes into her emergency room at 2:47 a.m., everything changes. Nathan Cross shouldn't know her secrets, shouldn't know about her dead brother, shouldn't know about the Architects, the shadow organization that erases human memories. But he does. And now Victoria has a choice. Stay safe in her carefully constructed life, or risk everything to expose a conspiracy that's been destroying minds for 15 years. The clock is ticking, and some truths refuse to stay buried. The emergency room at New York Presbyterian Hospital had a particular smell at 2:47 a.m., a mixture of antiseptic, blood, desperation, and the bitter coffee that had been sitting in the break room for 6 hours. Dr. Victoria Blake had learned to love that smell. It meant she was alive, functioning, doing what she was born to do. She stood at the nurse's station, her dark brown hair pulled back in a messy bun that somehow looked effortlessly elegant, her white coat pristine despite the chaos she'd navigated for the past 8 hours. Her light green eyes, the kind that seemed to see through people rather than at them, scanned the triage board with the focused intensity of a predator selecting prey. "Quiet night," muttered Danny Rodriguez, the charge nurse, a veteran of 20 years who'd seen everything the city could throw at an ER. Victoria's lips curved into a knowing smile. "Never say that. The universe has a sick sense of humor." As if on cue, the automatic doors exploded inward, and 2 paramedics burst through, pushing a gurney at a near run. A man lay on it, his expensive suit torn and soaked with blood, his face contorted in pain. Even in crisis, there was something magnetic about him. The sharp angles of his jaw, the way his blonde hair fell across his forehead, the intensity in his blue eyes that remained alert despite the trauma. "Gunshot wound to the abdomen," the lead paramedic shouted as they wheeled him toward Trauma Bay 1. "Single entry, no exit. BP's dropping, started at 120/80, now down to 90/60. Heart rate 140 and climbing. Found him in an alley in Tribeca. No ID, refused to give his name." Victoria was already moving, her heels clicking against the linoleum with military precision. She pulled on gloves as she walked, her mind shifting into that crystalline state of focus where everything else fell away. Her past, her demons, the insomnia that plagued her nights. All that existed was the patient, the problem, the solution. "Get me a trauma panel. Type and cross for 6 units and page surgery," she ordered, her British accent, softened by years in America, but still distinctly present, cutting through the noise. "Someone call radiology. I want a CT of his abdomen the second he's stable enough to move." She reached the gurney and locked eyes with the man. His blue eyes held hers with an intensity that made her pause for just a fraction of a second. Most gunshot victims she treated were either unconscious or screaming. This man was neither. He was watching her with the kind of focused attention that suggested he was cataloging every detail of her face, burning it into memory. "What's your name?" Victoria asked, scissors already cutting away his blood-soaked shirt to expose the wound. "Does it matter?" His voice was rough with pain but controlled, each word deliberate. "It matters to me." She examined the entry wound, a small, neat hole just below his right rib cage, blood welling steadily. No arterial spray, which was good, but the location was bad, very bad. "This is going to hurt." "Everything hurts, doctor." He glanced at her ID badge. Blake. Victoria Blake. British?
American now, and you're deflecting." She pressed her fingers around the wound, feeling for foreign bodies, assessing the damage. He flinched but didn't cry out. Impressive pain tolerance. "Who shot you?" "Wrong question." "Excuse me?" His lips twisted into something that might have been a smile if it wasn't edged with agony. "You should be asking why I'm still alive." Victoria's green eyes narrowed. 20 years of medical training, 10 years in trauma centers from London to New York, and she'd developed an instinct for patients who were more complicated than their injuries suggested. This man set off every alarm bell in her head. "BP still dropping, 85/55. Victoria ordered. "Hang 2 units of O-neg wide open and get me an ultrasound. I need to see if he's bleeding into his abdomen." She looked back at the patient. "I'm going to save your life, but I need your cooperation. Name." For a long moment, he just stared at Victoria, and Victoria had the unsettling feeling that he was making some kind of decision that had nothing to do with his medical treatment. Then, Nathan Cross. "Well, Nathan Cross, you're hemorrhaging internally, possibly into your liver or spleen. I need to get you to surgery in the next 20 minutes or you're going to die on this table. Do you understand?" "I understand perfectly, Dr. Blake." Another of those strange smiles. "I also understand that you're the best trauma surgeon in this hospital, that you did your residency at Guy's Hospital in London, that you transferred here 3 years ago, and that you have a reputation for taking cases other surgeons won't touch." Victoria's hand stilled. "How do you—" "I make it my business to know things." Nathan's voice was getting weaker, but his eyes remained locked on hers. "BP's still dropping, 85/55, Danny called out. "Hang 2 units of O-neg wide open and get me an ultrasound. I need to see if he's bleeding into his abdomen." She looked back at the patient. "I'm going to save your life, but I need your cooperation. Name." For a long moment, he just stared at Victoria, and Victoria had the unsettling feeling that he was making some kind of decision that had nothing to do with his medical treatment. Then, Nathan Cross. "Well, Nathan Cross, you're hemorrhaging internally, possibly into your liver or spleen. I need to get you to surgery in the next 20 minutes or you're going to die on this table. Do you understand?" "I understand perfectly, Dr. Blake." Another of those strange smiles. "I also understand that you're the best trauma surgeon in this hospital, that you did your residency at Guy's Hospital in London, that you transferred here 3 years ago, and that you have a reputation for taking cases other surgeons won't touch." Victoria's hand stilled. "How do you—" "I make it my business to know things." Nathan's voice was getting weaker, but his eyes remained locked on hers.
The surgery took 4 hours and 37 minutes. 4 hours and 37 minutes of Victoria's hands moving with mechanical precision through Nathan Cross's abdominal cavity, locating the bullet that had lodged itself dangerously close to his hepatic artery, repairing the damage to his liver, controlling bleeding that should have killed him before he ever reached the hospital. 4 hours and 37 minutes for her mind to race through possibilities she'd locked away years ago. "Ask me about your brother." Victoria stood at the scrub sink, watching pink-tinged water circle the drain, her hands trembling, not from exhaustion, but from the adrenaline crash that always came after the fight was won. The surgery had gone perfectly. Nathan Cross would live, and that meant she'd get her answers, whether she wanted them or not. "Hell of a save, Vic." Danny appeared beside her, pulling off his surgical cap to reveal salt and pepper hair plastered to his skull with sweat. "That liver repair was textbook. You should write it up for a journal." Victoria's laugh was sharp, humorless. Because I have so much free time? You have nothing but free time. You just choose to spend it here. Danny studied her with the concern of someone who'd worked with her long enough to see through the armor. When's the last time you left this hospital for more than 6 hours? Last Tuesday. To go to your apartment and sleep? To go to my apartment. Victoria didn't mention that she'd spent those 6 hours staring at the ceiling, her mind too loud for rest, memories she'd buried clawing their way to the surface. Sleep was a luxury she'd given up somewhere between London and New York, between the person she'd been and the person she'd become. She dried her hands with methodical precision, each movement controlled, measured. Control was everything. Control was the difference between functioning and falling apart. "The patient's asking for you," Danny said quietly. "Woke up about 20 minutes ago. First thing he said was your name." Victoria's jaw tightened. "Tell him I'll be there when I'm ready." "Vic, I said I'll be there when I'm ready." Her voice had that edge that made residents scatter and nurses back off. But Danny had known her long enough to be intimidated. "Who is he?" Danny asked. "And don't tell me he's just another GSW. I saw the way he looked at you, the things he said before he coded. That wasn't random." Victoria met his eyes in the mirror above the sink. For a moment, she considered telling him, considered sharing the burden of whatever nightmare she'd just opened the door to. But Victoria Blake had learned long ago that sharing burdens meant giving people power over you, and power was something she surrendered to no one. "He's a patient who got lucky," she said finally. "That's all." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. Victoria's office was a study in contradictions. Meticulously organized medical journals on one wall, chaotic stacks of patient files on another, a leather couch that had never been used, a coffee maker that ran constantly, and on her desk, hidden in the bottom drawer beneath old textbooks, a photograph she never looked at but couldn't bring herself to destroy. She pulled it out now, her hands steadier than they had any right to be. The photo showed two people, Victoria at 28, her dark hair longer then, her green eyes bright with ambition and innocence she'd since lost, and beside her, his arm around her shoulders, a young man with her same sharp features, same green eyes, same stubborn set to his jaw. Thomas Blake, her brother. Dead 5 years this October. Not dead, Victoria corrected herself with the brutal honesty that had become her trademark. Killed. There's a difference. The official report had called it suicide. Dr. Thomas Blake, brilliant psychiatrist specializing in personality disorders, had allegedly jumped from his 7th-floor office window at St. Mary's Hospital in London. The investigation was perfunctory, a note found on his computer, a history of depression that Victoria knew was fabricated, and a closed case that had shattered her world. Victoria knew the truth then, just as she knows now. Thomas hadn't jumped, he'd been pushed. But by whom and why? Those questions had consumed her for 2 years, had cost her her position at Guy's Hospital when she'd pushed too hard, asked too many questions, made too many enemies. So she'd run, taken her inheritance, money from parents who died when she and Thomas were young, and fled to New York, started over, became someone new, someone harder, someone who didn't ask questions because questions led to answers and answers led to pain. But Nathan Cross had just ripped that carefully constructed fiction to pieces with 4 words:
Ask me about your brother. A knock at her door made her shove the photo back into the drawer. Come in. The young resident, Emily Chen, brilliant and terrified of Victoria in equal measure, poked her head in. Dr. Blake, Mr. Cross is requesting to see you. He's getting agitated. His vitals are stable, but I'll be there in 5 minutes. Emily hesitated. There's something else. Security found something in his jacket pocket. They thought you should see it first before they catalog it as evidence. She handed Victoria a clear plastic bag. Inside was a business card, expensive cardstock, embossed lettering. But it wasn't Nathan Cross's card. It was Thomas Blake's. Victoria's vision swam. The card was from 5 years ago, from her brother's practice in London. She'd seen hundreds of them, but this one had something written on the back in handwriting she recognized as Thomas's distinctive scrawl. When she asks, tell her the architects are real. She was right all along.
The surgery took 4 hours and 37 minutes. 4 hours and 37 minutes of Victoria's hands moving with mechanical precision through Nathan Cross's abdominal cavity, locating the bullet that had lodged itself dangerously close to his hepatic artery, repairing the damage to his liver, controlling bleeding that should have killed him before he ever reached the hospital. 4 hours and 37 minutes for her mind to race through possibilities she'd locked away years ago. Ask me about your brother. Victoria stood at the scrub sink, watching pink-tinged water circle the drain, her hands trembling, not from exhaustion, but from the adrenaline crash that always came after the fight was won. The surgery had gone perfectly. Nathan Cross would live, and that meant she'd get her answers, whether she wanted them or not. Hell of a save, Vic. Danny appeared beside her, pulling off his surgical cap to reveal salt and pepper hair plastered to his skull with sweat. That liver repair was textbook. You should write it up for a journal. Victoria's laugh was sharp, humorless. Because I have so much free time? You have nothing but free time. You just choose to spend it here. Danny studied her with the concern of someone who'd worked with her long enough to see through the armor. When's the last time you left this hospital for more than 6 hours? Last Tuesday. To go to your apartment and sleep? To go to my apartment. Victoria didn't mention that she'd spent those 6 hours staring at the ceiling, her mind too loud for rest, memories she'd buried clawing their way to the surface. Sleep was a luxury she'd given up somewhere between London and New York, between the person she'd been and the person she'd become. She dried her hands with methodical precision, each movement controlled, measured. Control was everything. Control was the difference between functioning and falling apart. The patient's asking for you, Danny said quietly. Woke up about 20 minutes ago. First thing he said was your name. Victoria's jaw tightened. Tell him I'll be there when I'm ready. Vic, I said I'll be there when I'm ready. Her voice had that edge that made residents scatter and nurses back off, but Danny had known her long enough to be intimidated. Who is he? Danny asked. And don't tell me he's just another GSW. I saw the way he looked at you, the things he said before he coded. That wasn't random. Victoria met his eyes in the mirror above the sink. For a moment, she considered telling him, considered sharing the burden of whatever nightmare she'd just opened the door to. But Victoria Blake had learned long ago that sharing burdens meant giving people power over you, and power was
was something she surrendered to no one. "He's a patient who got lucky," she said finally. "That's all." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. Victoria's office was a study in contradictions. Meticulously organized medical journals on one wall, chaotic stacks of patient files on another, a leather couch that had never been used, a coffee maker that ran constantly, and on her desk, hidden in the bottom drawer beneath old textbooks, a photograph she never looked at but couldn't bring herself to destroy. She pulled it out now, her hands steadier than they had any right to be. The photo showed two people, Victoria at 28, her dark hair longer then, her green eyes bright with ambition and innocence she'd since lost, and beside her, his arm around her shoulders, a young man with her same sharp features, same green eyes, same stubborn set to his jaw. Thomas Blake, her brother, dead 5 years this October. Not dead, Victoria corrected herself with the brutal honesty that had become her trademark. Killed. There's a difference. The official report had called it suicide. Dr. Thomas Blake, brilliant psychiatrist specializing in personality disorders, had allegedly jumped from his 7th-floor office window at St. Mary's Hospital in London. The investigation was perfunctory, a note found on his computer, a history of depression that Victoria knew was fabricated, and a closed case that had shattered her world. Victoria knew the truth then, just as she knows now. Thomas hadn't jumped, he'd been pushed. But by whom and why? Those questions had consumed her for 2 years, had cost her her position at Guy's Hospital when she'd pushed too hard, asked too many questions, made too many enemies. So she'd run, taken her inheritance, money from parents who died when she and Thomas were young, and fled to New York, started over, became someone new, someone harder, someone who didn't ask questions because questions led to answers and answers led to pain. But Nathan Cross had just ripped that carefully constructed fiction to pieces with 4 words. "Ask me about your brother." A knock at her door made her shove the photo back into the drawer. "Come in." The young resident, Emily Chen, brilliant and terrified of Victoria in equal measure, poked her head in. "Dr. Blake, Mr. Cross is requesting to see you. He's getting agitated. His vitals are stable, but I'll be there in 5 minutes." Emily hesitated. "There's something else. Security found something in his jacket pocket. They thought you should see it first before they catalog it as evidence." She handed Victoria a clear plastic bag. Inside was a business card, expensive cardstock, embossed lettering. But it wasn't Nathan Cross's card. It was Thomas Blake's. Victoria's vision swam. The card was from 5 years ago, from her brother's practice in London. She'd seen hundreds of them, but this one had something written on the back in handwriting she recognized as Thomas's distinctive scrawl. "When she asks, tell her the architects are real. She was right all along."
The coffee shop was called Insomnia, which Victoria had always found grimly appropriate. At 7:30 a.m., it existed in that liminal space between the night shift heading home and the morning rush beginning, a pocket of quiet in a city that never truly rested. Victoria sat in her usual corner booth, a double espresso in front of her, Thomas's letter spread on the table like evidence at a crime scene. She'd read it 7 times now. Each time she found new details that cut like scalpels. They're using patients in psychiatric wards, homeless people,
anyone society won't miss. Her brother had been a psychiatrist. How many of his patients had disappeared into the architect's experiments? How many had he tried to save before they silenced him? Dr. Blake. Victoria looked up sharply to find a young woman standing beside her booth. Early 20s, nervous energy, expensive camera hanging from her neck. Everything about her screamed journalist, which made Victoria's instincts flare with warning. "I'm not giving interviews," Victoria said flatly. "I'm not asking for one. I'm asking for help." The woman slid into the booth without invitation, her hands shaking as she pulled a manila folder from her bag. "My name is Sarah Chen. My sister, Emily, was a patient at Riverside Psychiatric Hospital in London 5 years ago. She disappeared from her room one night. No body, no evidence, just gone. The hospital said she must have run away, but Emily was catatonic. She couldn't have walked out of there on her own." Victoria's blood ran cold. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Emily's psychiatrist was Dr. Thomas Blake, your brother, and because 2 days before Emily disappeared, she said something strange during one of her sessions." Sarah pulled a photograph from the folder, a young woman with Asian features and haunted eyes. "The hospital recorded all sessions. I got this transcript through a friend who worked there." She pushed a piece of paper across the table. Victoria's eyes scanned the words, and her hand involuntarily clenched around her coffee cup. "Patient Emily Chen, session number 47. The architects are building something in my head. They come at night with lights and questions. They make me forget, but I remember in pieces. Dr. Blake, please, you have to tell someone. They're taking us, all of us. We're experiments." Dr. Thomas Blake. "Emily, who are the architects? Can you describe them?" Patient. "I can't. Every time I try to remember their faces, it's like static, like my brain won't let me see them. But I know they're real. I know they're—" Session terminated abruptly. Patient sedated for aggressive behavior. Victoria's hands had gone numb. She looked up at Sarah, whose eyes were bright with unshed tears. 2 days later, Emily was gone, and 6 weeks after that, Dr. Blake was dead. Suicide, they said, but I never believed it. And now, she gestured at the letter on Victoria's table. "I'm guessing you didn't either." "How did you find me?" Victoria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been investigating my sister's disappearance for 5 years, following every lead, no matter how crazy it sounded. 6 months ago, I found a connection between missing psychiatric patients and a network of hospitals across Europe and America. All of them had patients who vanished. All of them had staff who died in suspicious circumstances. And all of them," Sarah's voice broke, "all of them mentioned something called the architects in their final days." Victoria's clinical mind was already making connections, seeing patterns. "How many patients?" "That I can confirm? 47 across 8 hospitals, but I think the real number is much higher, maybe hundreds." Sarah leaned forward. "Dr. Blake, I know you're just a trauma surgeon. I know this isn't your area, but your brother was investigating the same thing I am, and if there's any chance you know something, anything, that could help me find out what happened to Emily—" "I'll help you," Victoria said before she could think better of it. "But not here, not now. Give me your number. I'll contact you when it's safe." "Safe?" Sarah's eyes widened. "Dr. Blake, are you saying I'm in danger?" "I'm saying we all are." Victoria stood, gathering her things. "Don't go to the police. Don't tell anyone else about this conversation. And for God's sake, stop investigating on your own. These people, The architects, they've already killed to protect their secrets. They won't hesitate to kill again. Sarah grabbed her wrist as she turned to leave. You know something about what happened to the patients, about what they're doing. Victoria met her eyes, saw her own pain reflected there, the desperate need for answers, for justice, for closure. I'm going to find out, she promised, and when I do, you'll be the first to know. But right now, I need you to trust me and disappear for a while. I can't just... Yes, you can, because if you keep pushing, you're going to end up like your sister or like my brother. Victoria's voice was steel. Give me 2 weeks. Stay somewhere they can't find you. Don't use your phone, your credit cards, anything they can trace. Can you do that? After a long moment, Sarah nodded. She scribbled a number on a napkin. Not her real number, Victoria guessed, but a burner. 2 weeks, but if I don't hear from you by then, you will. Victoria left the coffee shop with Sarah's folder under her arm and a new weight on her shoulders. 47 confirmed cases, hundreds suspected, and Nathan Cross lying in a hospital bed with a bullet hole in his gut, claiming to have answers. The question was, could she trust him? When Victoria returned to the hospital, the morning shift was in full swing. Residents running between rooms, nurses updating charts, the organized chaos that made her feel centered. But today, that chaos felt different, threatening, because now she saw potential enemies everywhere. How deep did the architect's influence go? Were there doctors in this hospital working for them, administrators, security guards? She found Danny at the nurse's station, and his expression immediately told her something was wrong. Your GSW from last night, he's gone, he said quietly. Victoria's heart stuttered. What do you mean, gone? I mean, at 8:15 a.m. this morning, 2 men in suits showed up with federal credentials, FBI, they said, and took him into protective custody. They had all the right paperwork. The attending on duty signed off on the transfer. Which attending? Morrison. Dr. Richard Morrison, senior attending, 20 years at the hospital, by the book to a fault. Victoria's mind raced. Did they say why they needed him? Something about him being a witness in a federal case. They didn't give details. Danny's eyes narrowed. But here's the weird part. I called FBI headquarters to confirm the transfer, like we're supposed to. They have no record of any agents being sent to this hospital. No record of Nathan Cross being in protective custody.
Victoria was already moving, her heels clicking rapidly against the floor as she headed toward Morrison's office. Danny followed, concern etched on his face. Vic, what's going on? Who is this guy, really? Someone who's going to get us all killed if I'm not careful, Victoria muttered. Morrison's office was empty. His computer was on, the screen showing patient files. Victoria sat down and pulled up the transfer paperwork, her eyes scanning the signatures, the badge numbers, the official seals that all looked perfect, because of course they did. The architects wouldn't send amateurs. They took him 90 minutes ago, she said, checking the timestamp. Could be anywhere by now. Should we call the police? Victoria's laugh was bitter. The police are probably in on it. She turned to Danny, making a decision that would either save her life or end it. I need you to do something for me, and I need you to not ask questions. Victoria! Please, Danny, I've never asked you for anything, but I'm asking now. I need you to access the security footage from the ambulance bay last night. Find out who brought Nathan Cross in. Get me plates, faces, anything you can find. And then I need you to erase the footage. Danny stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You're asking me to destroy evidence? I'm asking you to trust me, just this once. Victoria's green eyes were intense, desperate. People are dying, Danny. Good people. And if I can't find Nathan Cross in the next 24 hours, I'm going to be one of them. For a long moment,
He just looked at her, this woman he'd worked with for 3 years, who'd never shown vulnerability, never asked for help, never let anyone close enough to matter. "I'll get you the footage," he said finally. "But Victoria, whatever you're involved in, be careful. This hospital needs you. I need you." Victoria squeezed his hand briefly, the most affection she'd shown anyone in years. "I'm sorry for dragging you into this, for—" "Don't," Danny interrupted. "Don't apologize for being you. Just promise me you'll come back in one piece." "I'll try." She left before he could see the lie in her eyes, because Victoria Blake had no idea if she'd come back at all. She only knew that Nathan Cross had answers, and whoever had taken him, the architects, federal agents, someone else entirely, they'd just declared war. And Victoria had never been good at surrendering. She went to her office, locked the door, and pulled out her phone. She had resources most doctors didn't: money from her inheritance, contacts from her years trying to investigate Thomas's death, and a stubborn refusal to accept defeat. It took her 45 minutes and 3 phone calls to old friends in London to get what she needed: a number for a private investigator in New York who specialized in finding people who didn't want to be found. "This is Marcus Webb," a gravelly voice answered. "Mr. Webb, my name is Dr. Victoria Blake. I need to find someone who was taken from my hospital this morning. 2 men posing as FBI agents. I can pay whatever you charge." There was a long pause. "The name Nathan Cross mean anything to you?" Victoria's breath caught. "How did—" "Because I was hired 3 days ago to keep tabs on him, make sure he stayed alive long enough to complete his mission. When he got himself shot, I thought that was the end of it. But if someone just snatched him from a hospital," Webb's voice turned grim, "that means the architects know he made contact with you." Victoria closed her eyes, felt the walls closing in. "Everyone seems to know about the architects except me." "That's because you were smart enough to run 5 years ago instead of digging deeper. But Nathan Cross, he's been hunting them for a long time, and now they've got him, which means they'll be coming for you next." "Let them come," Victoria said coldly. "But first, I need to find Nathan. Can you help me or not?" "I can try, but Dr. Blake, you need to understand something. The people you're up against, they're not just criminals. They're connected, powerful. They have resources you can't imagine. If you go after them—" "I'm not afraid of them." "You should be, because the last person who said that to me was your brother, and we both know how that ended." The line went dead. Victoria sat in her office, staring at the phone in her hand, feeling the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her. She could walk away, forget Nathan Cross, forget the architects, go back to her safe, empty life of saving strangers and avoiding her past. Or she could do what she'd always done, run toward the danger instead of away from it. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. "Dr. Blake." The voice was synthesized, distorted beyond recognition. "You've been asking questions. That's unfortunate." "Who is this?" "Someone who wants to give you a choice. Stop investigating. Forget Nathan Cross. Forget your brother. Go back to being a doctor. Or what?" Victoria's voice was ice. "Or we'll make you forget, just like we made all the others forget. You'll wake up one day with gaps in your memory, unable to trust your own mind. You'll second-guess everything, doubt everything, until you can't even remember why you were asking questions." Victoria thought about Emily Chen, about the 47 missing patients, about Thomas. "Here's my counteroffer," she said. "You tell me where Nathan Cross is. You tell me everything about the architects, and maybe I won't dedicate the rest of my life to destroying you." The synthesized laugh was chilling. "You have 24 hours to reconsider, Dr. Blake. After that, we'll be forced to take more permanent measures. Goodbye." The line went dead. Victoria sat perfectly still, her mind already working through the implications. 24 hours. They'd given her a deadline, which meant they were either supremely confident or desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. She pulled out Sarah Chen's folder, spread the documents across her desk, and began to read. If Nathan was gone, if she was on her own, then she needed to become an expert on the architects as quickly as possible. And somewhere in these pages, in the missing patients, the dead doctors, the inexplicable memory losses, there had to be a pattern, a weakness, something she could exploit. Because Victoria Blake was a surgeon, and surgeons didn't just save lives, they also knew exactly where to cut to cause the most damage. The fortress of ice she'd built around her heart was cracking, but underneath, something harder was emerging, something dangerous, something that the architects were about to learn they should have left buried.
The darkness came gradually, then all at once. Victoria spent the next 16 hours doing what she did best, researching, analyzing, building a case from fragments of evidence that most people would dismiss as coincidence. She compiled a list of 47 missing psychiatric patients across 8 hospitals. She cross-referenced staff deaths, suspicious suicides, unexplained resignations. She built timelines, identified patterns, connected dots that formed a picture so horrifying she had to keep reminding herself it was real. The architects weren't just experimenting on vulnerable patients. They were perfecting something, a technique, a process, something that allowed them to manipulate memory, behavior, identity itself. And they'd been doing it for at least 15 years. By midnight, Victoria's office looked like a detective's war room, papers pinned to walls, photographs connected by red string, her laptop displaying dozens of open tabs. She hadn't eaten, hadn't slept, hadn't left the hospital except for one brief trip to her apartment to retrieve Thomas's old files, the ones she'd kept hidden in a locked trunk because looking at them hurt too much. Now they were spread across her desk, and Victoria was reading her brother's notes with the clinical detachment she used during surgery. Emotions could wait. Right now, she needed information. Patient J.M., 34, diagnosed with severe PTSD, reports consistent gaps in memory following experimental therapy sessions. Claims to remember being in a facility with other patients, but details are fragmented. When pressed, becomes agitated and violent, sedation required. Patient R.K., 28, schizophrenic. After 6 weeks of experimental treatment, symptoms improved dramatically, almost too dramatically. Patient now claims previous diagnosis was incorrect, has no memory of psychotic episodes. Family confirms personality changes. Patient is calmer, more compliant, but seems hollow, according to sister. L.S., 41, depression and anxiety. Volunteered for experimental program. After treatment, patient reports feeling better than ever, but has lost all memory of childhood trauma that originally caused psychological issues. When shown photographs of deceased parents, has no emotional response. Brain scans show unusual activity in the hippocampus and amygdala. Thomas's handwriting became increasingly frantic in later entries. They're not treating mental illness. They're erasing parts of people's minds, selectively removing memories, emotions, entire aspects of personality. And they're getting better at it, more precise, more controlled. I confronted Dr. Helena Winters at the conference in Geneva, asked her directly about the memory manipulation protocols. She smiled at me, smiled, said I was asking the right questions but looking in the wrong direction. What does that mean? Someone broke into my office last night. Nothing was taken, but my files were disturbed. They know I'm investigating. They know I know.
Victoria, if you're reading this, I'm probably dead. I'm sorry, I should have stopped when I had the chance, but I can't unsee what I've seen, can't unknow what I know. These people are erasing human consciousness like data from a hard drive, and no one is stopping them. The last entry was dated 3 days before Thomas died. They contacted me, offered me a choice, join them or die. They said my research into trauma and memory made me valuable, that I could help them perfect the process. I told them to go to hell. I'm meeting with Nathan Cross tomorrow, former MI6, investigating the architects. He says he has evidence that could expose them, says he needs a psychiatrist who understands their methods to testify. I don't think I'm going to live through this, Vic, but maybe Nathan can. Maybe he can finish what I started. I love you, little sister. Don't come looking for answers. Please, just live your life. Be happy. Forget about me. T. Victoria's hands trembled as she put down the journal. Thomas had known they were going to kill him, and had walked into that meeting anyway because he believed the truth mattered more than his life. And she'd spent 5 years running from that truth. Not anymore. Her phone rang. Danny from the ER. Vic, you need to see this, now. She found him in the radiology reading room, staring at a CT scan with an expression of horrified fascination. What am I looking at? Victoria asked. This came in 20 minutes ago. 32-year-old male brought in unconscious, no ID, no obvious trauma, but look at his brain scan. Victoria leaned in, and her medical training warred with disbelief. The scan showed a normal brain in most respects, except for the hippocampus. The region responsible for forming new memories was lit up like a Christmas tree, showing activity patterns she'd never seen before. What could cause that? Danny asked. I don't know. Victoria pulled up the patient's vitals, his history. Then she saw it, a small notation in the admitting notes. Patient has multiple puncture marks on scalp, consistent with recent invasive procedure. No explanation provided. Her blood ran cold. Where is he now? Bay 7, still unconscious. We're waiting for neurology to... Victoria was already running. She burst into Bay 7 to find a young man lying on a gurney, his blonde hair shaved in patches, revealing dozens of small wounds that had been carefully sutured. Professional work, medical precision. She pulled back his eyelids, checked his pupils, both reactive. She ran her fingers over his scalp, feeling the pattern of puncture wounds. They formed a grid, precise, measured, exactly the kind of pattern you'd use if you were inserting electrodes deep into specific brain regions. Jesus Christ, she whispered. They're still doing it, right now, in this city. The patient's eyes suddenly opened, blue eyes, unfocused and terrified. His hand shot out, grabbing Victoria's wrist with desperate strength. Don't let them take me back, he gasped. Please, they're erasing me. Every time I go there, I come back with less of myself. I can't remember my daughter's name. I can't remember. His eyes rolled back. Seizure. Victoria shouted for medications, for help, her hands already moving to stabilize him. But even as she worked, even as she fought to keep this stranger alive, her mind was racing. This was proof, living, breathing proof that the architects were still operating, still experimenting, still destroying lives. And if this man had escaped from one of their facilities, that meant there was a facility, somewhere in New York, close enough that he'd made it to this hospital before collapsing. She needed to find it, needed to find Nathan Cross, needed to... Dr. Blake? A nurse appeared at her elbow. There are 2 men here to see you. They say it's urgent. They're waiting in your office. Victoria's instincts screamed danger. What men? They showed federal credentials, said they're investigating a matter of national security. The same story they used to take Nathan. Victoria's jaw tightened. "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes. And Danny," she caught his arm as he passed, "call hospital security. Tell them to be ready. Something's wrong." "Vic, you're scaring me." "Good. Be scared. It'll keep you alive." Victoria finished stabilizing the patient, gave orders for his continued care, then walked towards her office with her heart hammering, but her face perfectly calm. She'd dealt with dangerous situations before: violent patients, armed intruders, the chaos of trauma surgery, where one wrong move meant death.
This was no different, just another crisis to navigate. She pushed open her office door and found 2 men waiting, both in dark suits, both with the kind of bland, forgettable faces that screamed government training. But their eyes were sharp, predatory. "Dr. Blake," the taller one said, "thank you for seeing us. I'm Agent Morrison. This is Agent Hayes. We need to ask you some questions about Nathan Cross." "I already told the hospital everything I know," Victoria said, remaining by the door. "He came in with a gunshot wound, I operated, he recovered, and then you people took him." "You people?" Morrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm sorry, Dr. Blake, but we didn't take anyone. In fact, we're trying to find Mr. Cross. He's a person of interest in a federal investigation." "What kind of investigation?" "That's classified, but we have reason to believe he contacted you, possibly gave you information or materials. For your own safety, we need to know what he told you." Victoria's mind worked rapidly. These men weren't FBI. Their credentials might be perfect, their story plausible, but she could see it in the way they stood. Too relaxed, too confident. They knew she couldn't verify their story, knew she was trapped. "He told me his name," Victoria said. "That's all. He was unconscious or sedated most of the time I treated him. And yet you spent 40 minutes alone with him in the ICU this morning, before he was transferred." They'd been watching. Of course they had. Victoria felt the walls closing in, felt that familiar surge of adrenaline that came before a fight. "I was checking on my patient. That's my job." "Your job," Agent Hayes spoke for the first time, "is to heal people, Dr. Blake, not to interfere with federal investigations, not to ask questions about matters that don't concern you." "I'm not asking any questions." "Aren't you?" Morrison pulled out a photograph. Victoria entering the coffee shop that morning, meeting with Sarah Chen. "This woman is Sarah Chen. She's been investigating a series of disappearances connected to psychiatric facilities, and you met with her this morning. Why?" Her heart rate spiked, but her voice remained steady. "She asked to interview me about my brother's death. I declined. That was the extent of our conversation." "Liar." Hayes stepped closer, his voice dropping to something cold and threatening. "We know you took files from her. We know you've been researching the architects. We know—" Morrison put a hand on his partner's arm, silencing him. But the damage was done. They'd revealed their hand, confirmed everything Victoria suspected. "The architects," Victoria said quietly. "So they are real." Morrison's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Annoyance, perhaps, at his partner's slip. "Dr. Blake, you're playing a very dangerous game. Nathan Cross is a delusional former intelligence officer who's been chasing conspiracy theories for years. The organization he claims exists, the Architects, is a fiction, a paranoid delusion." "Then why are you here?" Victoria challenged. "Why go to this much trouble over a delusion?" "Because delusions can be dangerous, especially when they inspire others to act on them. Your brother, for instance, Thomas, was a brilliant man, but his investigation into these supposed conspiracies, it destroyed him, made him paranoid, isolated, until he couldn't take it anymore. My brother didn't kill himself." "No."
Morrison agreed, and Victoria's world tilted. He didn't, but not because he was murdered, because we helped him. We gave him a choice, treatment for his paranoid delusions or continued suffering. He chose treatment, and the treatment was successful. He was calm, happy, ready to move on with his life. Victoria's stomach lurched. You're saying you, what, erased his investigation from his mind? We helped him forget traumatic delusions that were destroying his mental health. And we can help you too, Dr. Blake. You're clearly under a great deal of stress, working yourself to exhaustion, seeing conspiracies where none exist. Let us help you. Come with us voluntarily. A few days of treatment and you'll feel like a hollow shell of myself. Victoria's voice was ice. Like those 47 patients who disappeared? Like that man in Bay 7 who can't remember his daughter's name because you erased her from his brain? The room fell silent. Morrison and Hayes exchanged a glance, and Victoria saw the decision being made. Dr. Blake, I'm afraid you've left us no choice. You're clearly suffering from acute paranoid delusions that pose a danger to yourself and others. Under Section 302 of the Mental Health Act, we're placing you under psychiatric hold. You'll be coming with us for evaluation. I'm not mentally ill. You can't. Hayes moved faster than Victoria expected, his hand closing around her arm in a grip that would leave bruises. We can, and we are. Now you can come quietly, or we can sedate you. Your choice. Victoria's training took over. She twisted, using leverage instead of strength, breaking Hayes's grip and putting distance between them. Her hand fumbled for her phone, but Morrison was there, knocking it from her grasp. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. We're not here to hurt you. We're here to help. By erasing my mind? By turning me into one of your compliant amnesiacs? Victoria's back hit her desk. No way out. No escape. I'd rather die. That can be arranged, too, Hayes said darkly. Morrison shot him another warning look. No one's dying. No one's being hurt. You're simply going to forget all this nonsense about architects and conspiracies. You'll go back to being a doctor. A good doctor. Isn't that better than... The door burst open. Danny stood there with 3 security guards, all looking tense and ready for trouble. Dr. Blake, these men aren't registered visitors. Should we escort them out? Morrison's hand went to his jacket, towards a gun, Victoria realized, but he stopped when he saw the guards were armed too. Hospital security in New York didn't take chances. This is a federal matter, Morrison said coldly. We have jurisdiction. Then you won't mind waiting while we verify your credentials with the FBI, Danny said. He'd already pulled out his phone, was already dialing. Should only take a few minutes. Morrison and Hayes exchanged another look. Then Morrison smiled, a gesture that made Victoria's skin crawl. Of course, we'll wait. But Dr. Blake, he fixed her with a stare that promised consequences. This isn't over. You have 24 hours. Use them wisely. They walked out, brushing past the security guards with the confidence of men who knew they'd already won. Victoria slumped against her desk, her legs suddenly weak. Danny was at her side immediately, concern etched on his face. What the hell was that about? Who were those men? Ghosts, Victoria said. Ghosts from a past I thought I'd escaped. She looked at Danny, at this man who'd just saved her life without knowing it, and made a decision. I need to leave. Tonight. Maybe for good. Can you cover for me? Vic, what's happening? What are you involved in? Something that's going to get me killed if I'm not very, very careful. She grabbed her bag, started shoving Thomas's files inside. But first, it's going to get me answers. Those men, they almost admitted the architects exist, admitted they experimented on Thomas, on God knows how many others. Then go to the police, go to the media, expose them. Victoria's laugh was bitter. The police are compromised. The media would think I'm insane.
And the architects, they have resources I can't fight directly. But maybe I can find Nathan Cross, and maybe together we can... Her phone buzzed. Not her phone, Victoria realized. The burner phone Sarah Chen had given her. Victoria pulled out the text message and felt her blood freeze. They have Nathan at Meridian Psychiatric Facility, Building 7, Room 203. They're starting the memory extraction tonight at midnight. If you want to save him, you have 3 hours. Come alone. This is your only chance. S. Victoria checked the time. 9:17 p.m. 3 hours. It was a trap. Obviously a trap. Sarah probably got caught, forced to send this message. Or maybe Sarah was working for them all along. Every logical part of Victoria's brain screamed at her not to go, not to walk into such an obvious setup. But Nathan Cross had answers, and if they erased his mind tonight, those answers died with his memories. I have to go, Victoria said, heading for the door. Vic, don't. Whatever this is, it's not worth your life. She paused at the threshold, looked back at Danny. My brother died trying to expose these people. If I don't finish what he started, if I let them keep destroying lives, then his death meant nothing, and I can't live with that. Then at least take someone with you. Don't go alone.
Meridian Psychiatric Facility sat on the outskirts of New York like a monument to forgotten souls. The main building was early 20th century, red brick and iron bars, the kind of place where people were sent to disappear. But Building 7 was newer, modern, all glass and steel that gleamed under the security lights like a cage made of mirrors. Victoria parked 3 blocks away, her hands steady on the wheel despite the adrenaline flooding her system. She'd changed out of her white coat into dark jeans and a black jacket, pulled her dark brown hair into a tight ponytail. In the passenger seat sat a medical bag, her insurance policy, filled with sedatives, scalpels, and enough pharmaceutical knowledge to improvise solutions to problems she couldn't yet anticipate. 10:47 p.m., 73 minutes until midnight. She'd studied the facility's layout on the drive over, publicly available blueprints from the city planning office, because even secret conspiracies had to follow building codes. Building 7 had 4 floors, restricted access, security cameras at every entrance. Room 203 would be on the 2nd floor, north wing. Getting in would be impossible through the front, but Victoria had spent 10 years working in hospitals, and hospitals all had the same weakness: service entrances, loading docks, places where deliveries came in and trash went out, monitored by bored security guards who'd rather watch their phones than their screens. She found the service entrance behind Building 7, a metal door with a keycard reader, a camera pointed at the entrance, and a dumpster that provided perfect cover. Victoria crouched behind it, watching, waiting. Patience was a surgeon's virtue. You didn't rush into an operation. You waited for the right moment, the perfect angle. At 11:03 p.m., a custodian emerged, propping the door open with a trash can while he made multiple trips to the dumpster. Victoria moved during his 3rd trip, slipping through the door before it closed, her footsteps silent on the industrial tile floor. The service corridor was empty, fluorescent lights, the smell of disinfectant, the hum of HVAC systems. She oriented herself mentally, matched the corridor to the blueprints she'd memorized. Stairs to her left, 2nd floor, north wing. Victoria climbed the stairs quickly but quietly, every sense alert for danger. At the 2nd floor landing she paused, listening. Voices, footsteps, the ordinary sounds of a facility at night. But underneath, if she listened carefully, something else, a low hum that seemed to vibrate through the walls. She pushed through the stairwell door into a hallway that looked nothing like a hospital.
This was a research facility. Sterile white walls, doors with biometric locks, windows made of reinforced glass that revealed rooms filled with equipment she recognized from Thomas's notes, neural imaging devices, electrode arrays, computers running software that mapped brain activity in real time. Room 203 was at the end of the hall, its doors slightly ajar, light spilling out. Too easy, Victoria's instincts warned, but she didn't have time for caution. If Nathan was in there, if they were already beginning the procedure, she pushed the door open and stepped into a nightmare. The room was set up like an operating theater, but the equipment was all wrong. Nathan Cross lay strapped to a modified surgical table, his blonde hair shaved, his scalp covered in a grid of electrodes connected to machines that pulsed with light. His blue eyes were open but unfocused, drugged into compliance. Around him stood 3 people in white coats, 2 men and 1 woman, all wearing surgical masks.
But it was the woman who made Victoria's breath catch. Because even with the mask, even with 5 years of aging, she recognized those eyes. Dr. Helena Winters, the psychiatrist Thomas had confronted in Geneva, the one who'd smiled and told him he was asking the right questions but looking in the wrong direction. "Dr. Blake," Helena said without turning around, "right on time. I was beginning to think you wouldn't come." Victoria's hand went to the medical bag slung over her shoulder. "Let him go." "Why? So he can continue his pointless crusade against us?" Helena finally turned, pulling down her mask to reveal a face that would have been beautiful if not for the absolute lack of empathy in her expression. "Nathan Cross has been a thorn in our side for 3 years. Tonight, we're going to remove that thorn. By tomorrow morning, he'll wake up believing he's an accountant from New Jersey who's never heard of the architects. You can't just erase someone's identity." "Can't we?" Helena gestured to the equipment surrounding Nathan. "We've been perfecting this technique for 15 years, Dr. Blake. Selective memory excision. We can remove trauma, addiction, mental illness, anything that makes a person suffer. We're not monsters, we're healers. Healers don't experiment on people without consent. Consent is irrelevant when the patient lacks the capacity to understand what they're consenting to." Helena's voice was maddeningly reasonable, like she was explaining a simple medical procedure. "The mentally ill, the traumatized, the broken, they can't make rational decisions about their own treatment, so we make those decisions for them. We give them better lives, happier lives. By making them into different people," Victoria said, "by stealing their memories, their identities, everything that makes them who they are." "And is that so terrible?" Helena moved closer, her eyes bright with conviction. "Tell me, Dr. Blake, if you could erase the memory of your brother's death, would you? If you could forget the pain, the guilt, the 5 years you've spent running, wouldn't you want that?" Victoria's jaw clenched. "My pain makes me who I am." "Does it? Or does it just make you broken?" Helena tilted her head, studying Victoria like a fascinating specimen. "Nathan understood in the end. When we offered him the procedure, offered to erase his paranoia and fear, he agreed. He wanted to forget." "You're lying." "Am I?" Helena nodded to one of her assistants, who pulled up a video on the nearby monitor. The screen showed Thomas, alive, sitting in a chair in this very room, electrodes attached to his head. But his expression was calm, resigned. His voice came through the speakers, and Victoria felt something inside her break. "I want to forget. I want to stop seeing conspiracies in every shadow. I want my life back. Please, just make it stop." That 3 days before he died, Helena said softly, we performed the procedure. It was successful, perfectly successful. Thomas woke up with no memory of the architects, no paranoid delusions. He was happy for the first time in months. Then why is he dead? Victoria's voice was raw. Because the erasure was too successful. We removed his investigation, his paranoia, but we also removed the context for his entire career choice. Without the trauma that had driven him to become a psychiatrist, he had no reason to continue. He experienced what we call identity cascade, a psychological collapse when someone realizes they no longer understand why they are who they are. Victoria's jaw trembled with rage. You killed him. You erased so much of his mind that he couldn't function. We made a mistake, Helena admitted. The procedure was less refined then, but we've improved significantly. With Nathan, we'll be much more precise. We'll only remove his memories of the architects, his investigation, his contact with you. He'll retain his core identity. He'll be fine. He won't be Nathan Cross anymore. He'll be a better version of Nathan Cross, one who can sleep at night, who doesn't jump at shadows, who can have normal relationships, a normal life. And the procedure begins in 37 minutes. You can either leave now, forget you saw any of this, and live your life in peace, or, her eyes hardened, we can put you on the table next to him. Victoria's hands raced through options. She was outnumbered 3-1. The room had only one exit, which Helena's assistants were now blocking. Her medical bag might have sedatives, but she'd have to get close enough to use them. And even if she could overpower them, how would she get Nathan out? He was drugged, strapped down, barely conscious.
I know what you're thinking, Helena said. You're wondering if you can fight your way out, if your medical knowledge gives you an advantage. And maybe it does. But Dr. Blake, before you do something reckless, ask yourself this. What happens to all those missing patients if you die tonight? What happens to the evidence your brother collected? What happens to Sarah Chen, who's currently locked in room 307, waiting for her own procedure? Victoria's blood ran cold. Sarah's here? She's been very helpful, told us everything about her investigation, her contacts, her evidence, all in exchange for a promise that we'd let her go. Helena smiled. Of course, she won't remember making that deal, won't remember her sister, her investigation, any of it. She'll wake up believing she's a graphic designer who's never heard of Emily Chen. You're monsters. We're scientists, Helena corrected, pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Your brother saw that, eventually. He understood that some suffering serves no purpose, that some memories are better forgotten. And you'll understand too, Dr. Blake, because I'm going to give you a choice your brother never got. She nodded to her assistants, who wheeled in a second surgical table, positioning it next to Nathan's. Join us, Helena said simply. You're a brilliant surgeon. Your understanding of neurology, your steady hands, your absolute fearlessness. You'd be invaluable to our research. We could use someone like you. And in exchange, we'll let Nathan Cross go, unharmed, his memories intact. Victoria stared at her, trying to process the offer. You want me to help you erase people's minds? I want you to help us heal people's minds, to remove trauma, addiction, mental illness, to give people second chances. Helena's voice was almost hypnotic. Think about it. How many patients have you seen destroyed by their own memories? How many addicts who can't escape their past? How many trauma victims who can't move forward? We could help them all. We could erase their pain. And their identity, their choices, everything that makes them human.
only the parts that hurt them. Helena extended her hand. What do you say, Dr. Blake? Will you help us? Or will you end up like your brother, another idealist who couldn't accept that sometimes the kindest thing we can do is help people forget? Victoria looked at Nathan, at his unfocused eyes, at the electrodes covering his skull. She thought about Thomas, about his final moments of confusion and despair. She thought about Sarah Chen, about Emily, about the 47 confirmed victims and the hundreds more who disappeared into the architect's machines. And she thought about the syringe of propofol in her medical bag, the scalpel, the knowledge of exactly where to cut to cause maximum damage. I have a counter-offer, Victoria said. She moved before Helena could react, her hand diving into her bag, pulling out the syringe. But she wasn't aiming for Helena. She was aiming for the machine connected to Nathan, the neural interface that was controlling the electrode array. The syringe plunged into the machine's liquid cooling system, and Victoria pushed the plunger, flooding the delicate electronics with sedative. Sparks flew, alarms shrieked. The electrodes on Nathan's head went dark. "Stop her!" Helena screamed. But Victoria was already moving to the second machine, to the third, systematically destroying every piece of equipment in the room with the precision of a surgeon excising cancer. She grabbed the scalpel from her bag as one of the assistants lunged for her, slashed across his reaching hand, not deep enough to kill, but deep enough to make him scream and pull back. "You're destroying years of research!" Helena grabbed for Victoria, but Victoria was faster, stronger, fueled by 5 years of buried rage finally finding an outlet. "Good," Victoria snarled. She slammed her elbow into Helena's face, felt the satisfying crunch of a breaking nose, shoved her away. Then she was at Nathan's table, cutting through the restraints, pulling the electrodes from his scalp with hands that didn't shake despite the chaos erupting around her. "Nathan," she said urgently, "can you hear me? We need to move, now." His blue eyes tried to focus on her face. "Victoria? Yeah, it's me. Can you walk?" "I don't know." "Then we'll find out." She hauled him upright, getting his arm over her shoulders, supporting most of his weight. He was heavy, muscular despite the drugs weakening him, but Victoria had spent years maneuvering unconscious patients. She could do this. The assistants were regrouping. Helena was on her phone calling security. Alarms were blaring. They had maybe 90 seconds before this room filled with guards. Victoria looked around desperately, saw the window, reinforced glass, but glass nonetheless. She grabbed a metal equipment tray, hurled it at the window with all her strength. The glass spiderwebbed, but didn't break. "Again," Nathan mumbled, his hand joining hers on another tray. Together, they threw it. This time, the glass exploded outward. They were on the second floor. Below was a lawn, maybe a 15-foot drop, survivable if they landed right, fatal if they didn't. "Trust me?" Victoria asked. Nathan's smile was drugged but genuine. "Always."
They hit the ground hard. Victoria had tried to turn her body mid-fall, to absorb the impact with her legs and roll, but Nathan's weight threw off her trajectory. They landed in a tangle of limbs on the wet grass, the air knocked from Victoria's lungs, pain shooting through her left ankle. Nathan groaned beside her, his drugged reflexes too slow to protect himself properly. "Move," Victoria gasped, ignoring the screaming pain in her ankle. Above them, lights were flooding the second-floor window they'd jumped from, voices shouting. Security would be on them in seconds. She hauled Nathan to his feet. He was more alert now, the adrenaline from the fall burning through some of the sedation. They stumbled across the lawn toward the tree line that bordered the facility's eastern fence. Victoria's ankle threatened to buckle with each step, but she forced herself forward through sheer willpower. Behind them, the facility erupted into chaos. Searchlights swept across the grounds. An alarm klaxon wailed into the night. Victoria heard the bark of dogs. Security had canine units. "The fence," Nathan panted, pointing ahead. 12 feet, topped with razor wire. We'll never make it over." "We don't need to go over," Victoria pulled her medical bag around, fumbling inside while they ran. Her fingers closed on a scalpel. Not the right tool for this, but it would have to do. We go through. The fence was chain link, industrial strength. Victoria dropped to her knees where the fence met the ground, started sawing at the metal links where they were weakest, at the joints where corrosion had made the steel brittle. Nathan joined her, his larger hands gripping the fence and pulling while she cut. "This is insane," he muttered, but there was admiration in his voice. "You just assaulted federal researchers, destroyed millions of dollars in equipment, and jumped out a second-story window?" They weren't federal, and that equipment was being used to lobotomize people. Victoria's scalpel blade snapped. She cursed, grabbed another from her bag. "Keep pulling." The searchlights were getting closer. She could hear boots pounding across the lawn, orders being shouted. 30 seconds, maybe less. The chain link finally gave way with a metallic shriek. Victoria shoved the opening wider, ignoring the razor wire that sliced her palms. Pushed Nathan through first, then squeezed through herself. Her jacket caught on the wire, ripped. Blood from her hands made the metal slippery. They emerged into dense woods. No path, no lights, just darkness and trees, and the slope of a hill leading down toward— Victoria tried to orient herself mentally— the industrial district near the river. Warehouses, shipping containers, places to hide. "Run," she said. They ran. Victoria's ankle screamed with every step. Nathan was still unsteady, his coordination compromised by whatever drugs they'd given him, but fear and survival instinct drove them forward, crashing through underbrush, branches whipping their faces, the sounds of pursuit growing louder behind them. A dog barked, much too close. Victoria risked a glance back and saw lights bobbing through the trees, flashlights, maybe 100 yards behind and closing fast. "We can't outrun them," Nathan gasped. "Then we outsmart them." Victoria spotted what she was looking for, a stream cutting through a ravine, water flowing fast over rocks. "Come on." They half slid, half fell down the embankment into the cold water. It was shallow, maybe knee-deep, but the current was strong. Victoria pulled Nathan upstream, against the flow, their scent trail broken by the water. The dogs would lose them here, temporarily. They waited for 5 minutes that felt like hours, until Victoria's legs were numb and Nathan was shaking from cold and shock. Finally, she spotted an overhang, tree roots creating a small cave in the riverbank. Not perfect, but it would do. They collapsed into the hollow, pressed against the muddy bank, breathing hard. Above them, flashlights swept through the woods. The dogs had reached the stream, were barking in confusion as they lost the scent. Nathan and Victoria huddled together in the darkness, waiting, listening. Slowly, the search moved away, following the stream in the wrong direction. The voices faded, the lights disappeared. For the first time since jumping from the window, they were safe, temporarily. Victoria's hands were shaking, not from fear but from adrenaline crash. She'd just committed what legally constituted assault, destruction of property, and breaking and entering. Her medical career was over. Her life in New York was over. Everything she'd built in 5 years had just been demolished in 15 minutes of absolute chaos. And somehow, she'd never felt more alive. "Thank you," Nathan said quietly, "for coming for me, for risking everything." "Don't thank me yet." Victoria examined her bleeding palms in the dim moonlight filtering through the trees. "We're still in the middle of nowhere, covered in blood and mud, with no transportation and no way to call for help. And the architects know exactly who I am and where I work. They knew that before tonight. Before tonight, I was just asking questions. Now I've declared war." She looked at him, at this man who'd crashed into her life with a bullet in his gut and secrets that had upended everything. "You said you were MI6, that you've been investigating the architects for 3 years. So tell me, what's the plan? How do we fight an organization this powerful?" Nathan was quiet for a long moment, his blue eyes distant. "The truth? I don't know.
I've spent 3 years gathering evidence, building cases, trying to expose them, and they've shut down every attempt. They have people in law enforcement, in government, in the media. Every time I get close, they erase my witnesses, discredit my evidence, make me look like a paranoid conspiracy theorist. Then why keep fighting? Because they killed people I cared about. My partner at MI6, they erased her mind so thoroughly she didn't recognize me when I visited her in the care facility. A journalist who was helping me investigate, he committed suicide 2 days before his exposé was supposed to run. A psychiatric patient who survived one of their experiments and was willing to testify, she vanished from a secure safe house.
Nathan turned to face her fully, and in the moonlight, Victoria could see the weight of years of failure in his expression. I keep fighting because someone has to. Because if I stop, they win. They get to keep destroying lives, keep playing God with people's minds, keep deciding who deserves to remember their own past and who doesn't. My brother felt the same way, Victoria said softly. It got him killed. It might get us killed too, Nathan agreed. But Dr. Blake, Victoria, I need you to understand something. What you saw tonight in that facility, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The memory erasure program is one project. They have others. Behavioral conditioning, personality reconstruction. They're trying to figure out how to literally reprogram human consciousness. To what end? Control. Nathan's voice was grim. Imagine a world where dissidents can be treated for their political beliefs, where whistleblowers forget what they knew, where anyone who threatens the powerful can have their identity erased with a medical procedure that leaves no external evidence, no bruises, no scars, just a person who wakes up believing they're someone else entirely. Victoria felt sick. And they're getting close to perfecting it? They're already using it. That man you treated tonight, the one with the electrode marks, he's the 3rd escapee I've tracked in the past month, which means their experiments are accelerating. They're testing on more people, refining the process. Whatever they're building toward, they're getting ready to deploy it on a larger scale. Then we need to go public. Post the evidence online, send it to every news outlet, make it impossible for them to suppress. I've tried that. They control the narrative. Anything we publish gets labeled as fake news, conspiracy theory, the ravings of mentally unstable individuals. Nathan leaned his head back against the muddy bank, exhaustion finally overtaking the adrenaline. We need something undeniable. Physical proof, multiple witnesses, a smoking gun so big they can't bury it. The facility, Victoria said suddenly. Building 7. We destroyed some of their equipment, but there must be records, patient files, research data. If we could get back in. They'll be expecting that. The security will be tripled. And even if we got in, they've probably already wiped the servers, destroying evidence. Nathan's expression was bleak. We had one chance to catch them off guard, and we used it to escape. Now they'll lock everything down. Victoria's mind raced through possibilities, scenarios, the kind of strategic thinking that made her a good surgeon. What about the other facilities? You said there are 8 hospitals where patients disappeared, if they're running experiments in multiple locations. Most of them are in Europe, and I'm on watch lists at every major airport. Nathan smiled grimly. The architects made sure I can't leave the country without being detained. But I can. Victoria's green eyes lit up with an idea. I'm a doctor. I have a legitimate reason to attend medical conferences, visit research facilities, and I still have contacts in London from when I worked at Guy's Hospital. You're suggesting we split up, investigate different locations? I'm suggesting we gather evidence from every angle. You work the American side, track down the patients who escaped, get their testimonies on record, find out where else in the U.S. they're operating.
I'll go to London, investigate the European facilities, see if I can find records they haven't destroyed yet. You're taking a huge risk. I'm already in danger, Victoria interrupted. They know my name, my face, where I work. Staying in New York just makes me an easier target. She pulled out her phone, miraculously still intact despite the fall, and checked the time. 12:47 a.m. I have maybe 6 hours before my absence from the hospital gets noticed, before they start looking for me. And then Dr. Victoria Blake disappears, just like all those patients, except I'm going to disappear on my own terms, to places where I can do the most damage to their organization. She met Nathan's eyes. But I need something from you first. Everything you know about the architects, names, locations, organizational structure, every piece of intelligence you've gathered in 3 years.
Nathan studied her face. This woman who'd saved his life, destroyed a research facility, and jumped out a window without hesitation, and made his decision. My car is parked 3 miles from here. In the trunk is a go bag with everything I've collected. Drives with encrypted files, printed documents, photographs, everything. Can you make it 3 miles? If it means taking down the architects, I'll crawl if I have to. They emerged from the hiding spot, muddied and bloodied, but alive. The forest was quiet now. The search had moved on, probably assuming they'd made it to the main road. Victoria oriented herself by the stars, picked a direction, started walking. Nathan fell into step beside her, and for the first time since this nightmare began, Victoria didn't feel alone. They were both damaged, both running from pasts that had marked them, both fighting battles that seemed impossible to win. But maybe that was exactly what the architects hadn't counted on. 2 people too stubborn to quit, too angry to run, too reckless to care about the odds. When this is over, Nathan said as they walked through the dark woods, assuming we survive, what will you do? Victoria thought about her apartment in Brooklyn that had never felt like home, her position at the hospital that she'd used to hide from life rather than live it, the careful walls she'd built that had just come crashing down. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe I'll finally stop running from my brother's ghost. Maybe I'll find a way to actually sleep at night. Maybe I'll... She paused, surprised by what she was about to say. Maybe I'll find a reason to care about something other than work. That sounds like a good plan. What about you? Nathan's smile was tired but genuine. I think I'd like to be someone other than a man obsessed with conspiracy theories. Maybe go back to being just Nathan Cross, not the spy, not the investigator, just a person. We should both get that chance, Victoria said, once we burn the architects to the ground. They walked in companionable silence, 2 ghosts moving through the darkness, planning their war against an enemy that had taken everything from them. The night was cold, the future uncertain, and death was probably waiting around some corner they couldn't yet see. But for now, they were alive, and they were fighting back. And sometimes that had to be enough.
Nathan's car was exactly where he'd said it would be. A nondescript gray sedan parked behind an abandoned warehouse, covered in a layer of dust that suggested it had been there for days. He pulled keys from a hidden magnetic box under the rear bumper, popped the trunk with hands that still trembled slightly from the drugs. Inside was a go bag that would have impressed any intelligence operative. Fake IDs, cash in multiple currencies, burner phones, a laptop with military-grade encryption, and 3 thick folders stuffed with documents. But it was the photograph paper-clipped to the first folder that made Victoria's breath catch. Her father, James Blake, standing with 3 other people in what looked like a government building, suits, serious expressions, the kind of official photograph taken for classified projects.
And beside her father, younger but unmistakable, was Nathan Cross. "You really did know him," Victoria whispered. "I worked with him for 2 years at MI6. He was my mentor." Nathan's voice carried the weight of old grief. James Blake was investigating early reports of illegal psychiatric experiments in military hospitals. He found evidence of memory manipulation being used on soldiers who'd witnessed classified operations, a way to protect state secrets without having to eliminate witnesses. The architects. Not yet. Back then, it was just a Black Ops program called Project Tabula Rasa. Your father was supposed to shut it down, expose it to Parliament, but before he could, Nathan's jaw clenched. He and your mother died in a car accident. Brake failure, officially ruled as mechanical malfunction. Victoria's hands had gone numb. They killed my parents. I couldn't prove it. I was just a junior agent, 24 years old, and James' death was swept under so many levels of classification that I couldn't get access to the investigation. But I knew it wasn't an accident. Nathan met her eyes. That's why I promised him, at his funeral, standing at his grave, that I'd finish what he started, that I'd protect his children if the architects ever came for them. You were too late for Thomas. I know. The pain in Nathan's voice was raw. By the time I tracked him down in London, by the time I made contact and convinced him to trust me, they were already watching him. I thought I was being careful, thought I was protecting him, but they were always 3 steps ahead. Victoria opened the first folder with hands that shook. Inside were patient records, dozens of them, each one documenting the progression from normal person to hollowed-out shell. Names, dates, photographs showing the before and after, smiling faces that became blank stares, lives that became voids. "Emily Chen," she said, recognizing one of the photos. "Sarah's sister." File 17. She was part of the European trials, 2019, diagnosed with severe trauma from a sexual assault. Instead of treating her PTSD with conventional therapy, they used her for testing. They isolated the traumatic memories, erased them with surgical precision, but they took too much. By the time they were done, Emily couldn't remember her own name. Victoria kept reading, kept absorbing the nightmare documented in meticulous detail. The patients got younger in the later files. Teenagers, children, a 6-year-old boy who'd witnessed his parents' murder. They'd erased the trauma and accidentally erased his ability to form emotional attachments. A 14-year-old girl with anorexia. They tried to erase her body image issues and instead destroyed her sense of preservation. "They're not getting better at this," Victoria said. "They're getting worse, more aggressive, taking bigger risks with people's minds." "Because they're desperate." Nathan pulled out the laptop, booted it up. 3 months ago, I intercepted communications between architect facilities. They're planning something called the Phoenix Initiative, full deployment of the memory erasure technology on what they called large-scale populations. What does that mean? I don't know, but whatever it is, it's happening soon, within the next 6 months. The laptop screen illuminated Nathan's face with cold blue light. Victoria's phone buzzed, the burner from Sarah. She answered immediately. "Sarah, are you—" "Dr. Blake." The voice wasn't Sarah's, it was Helena Winters. "I have to admit I'm impressed. Destroying the lab, escaping through a second-story window, evading our security. Very resourceful. Your father would be proud." Victoria's blood turned to ice. "Where's Sarah?" "Safe, sedated, waiting for her procedure, which will begin in approximately," a pause, "4 hours, unless you give me what I want." "Which is what?" "Nathan Cross and all the evidence he's collected. Bring them to me and I'll let Ms. Chen go. I have my word as a physician." "Your word means nothing." "Perhaps, but it's the only offer you're getting." Helena's voice hardened. "You have until 5 a.m. The address I'm texting you now. Come alone. Any sign of police, of media, of anyone other than you and Nathan Cross, and Sarah Chen becomes our most successful case study yet. We'll erase so much of her mind that she won't even remember how to speak."
The line went dead. Victoria looked at Nathan, who'd heard every word through the phone's speaker. "It's a trap. Obviously. If we go, they'll kill us. Or worse, they'll turn us into experiments. Probably." Victoria started pacing, her surgeon's mind working through the problem from every angle. "But if we don't go, Sarah dies, and we lose our only chance to get inside one of their facilities while they're actively running the program." Nathan's eyes lit with understanding. "You want to use the trap. I want to document everything, get video evidence of the procedures, the patients, the equipment. Broadcast it live before they can stop us." Victoria pulled out her own phone, not the burner, but her regular phone with its high-quality camera. "You said they control the narrative, that anything we publish gets labeled conspiracy theory. But what if we don't publish? What if we stream? Live footage that goes out to thousands of people simultaneously, too many sources to shut down at once. They'll trace the signal, stop the broadcast. Not if we use multiple devices, multiple platforms, multiple accounts all streaming the same footage simultaneously." Victoria's green eyes were bright with dangerous inspiration. "We give them exactly what they want. Nathan and the evidence walking straight into their facility, but we wire ourselves with cameras, stream everything, and even if they kill us, even if they destroy the evidence, the world will have already seen it," Nathan finished. He was smiling now, that reckless smile of someone who'd been waiting 3 years for a chance like this. "It's suicide. It's our only play. I know." Nathan closed the laptop, started gathering equipment from his go bag. "We'll need multiple phones, streaming apps set up in advance, backup batteries, and someone on the outside monitoring the feeds, ready to save and redistribute the footage if the original streams get taken down." "Danny," Victoria said immediately. "He's already suspicious about what I'm involved in, and he's tech-savvy enough to handle the streaming setup." She checked her watch. 1:23 a.m. 3 hours and 37 minutes until the deadline. "Can you set up the technical side? Give me 2 hours. You have 90 minutes. I need to make some calls." They worked in the abandoned warehouse like surgeons preparing for the most important operation of their lives. Nathan configured phones, tablets, even a pair of glasses with a hidden camera. Victoria called Danny, explained just enough to get his help without putting him in more danger than necessary. "You're insane," Danny said when she finished. "You're going to walk into a facility run by people who erase minds for a living, and you're going to live stream it? That's the plan. They'll kill you, Vic. Probably. But they'll do it on camera. And that footage, evidence of actual murder, actual human experimentation, that's the smoking gun we need." Silence on the other end of the line. Then, "What do you need from me?" Victoria smiled, despite the fear churning in her gut. "A miracle. Or at least someone who can keep multiple video streams running while simultaneously distributing them to every major news outlet and social media platform. I can do that. But Victoria, promise me something." "What?" "Promise me you'll try to survive this. I know you don't value your own life the way you should, but some of us would miss you if you were gone." Victoria's throat tightened. "I'll try. That's all I can ask." She hung up and found Nathan watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You have people who care about you," he said. "That's rare in our line of work. I've spent 5 years pushing everyone away. Danny's persistence is admirable, but probably not healthy. Or maybe he sees something in you worth persisting for." Nathan handed her a phone that looked normal but had been modified with extended battery and streaming capabilities. "We should talk about what happens if this works. If we survive and the footage goes viral and the architects are exposed. What about it? You'll never practice medicine again. Your medical license will be revoked for the crimes we committed tonight. Your life, everything you've built, it's over." Victoria thought about the endless shifts,
the empty apartment, the patients she saved while her own life slowly died from neglect. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe I needed someone to burn down my safe little prison. And if it doesn't work, if we die in that facility, at least I'll die fighting for something that matters. That's more I could say yesterday. She met his eyes. What about you? Any regrets? Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Just one. That I didn't find you sooner. Your brother talked about you constantly, his brilliant little sister who could have been a world-class surgeon if she wasn't so reckless. He'd be proud of what you're doing tonight. Or horrified that I'm walking into the same trap that killed him. Both, probably. Nathan's smile was sad. The Blake family specialty. Doing the right thing, even when it's suicidal.
They finished the preparations in silence, each lost in their own thoughts about the coming confrontation. At 4:47 a.m., they looted into Nathan's car, cameras hidden on their bodies, phones configured to start streaming at the push of a button, and drove toward the address Helena had provided. It wasn't Meridian's psychiatric facility. It was somewhere else, an office building in Midtown Manhattan, the kind of sleek glass tower that housed investment firms and consulting agencies. Perfectly normal, perfectly anonymous, the kind of place where terrible things could happen behind closed doors and no one would ever know. Top floor, Nathan said, reading the text message instructions. Penthouse level. They're not even pretending to hide anymore. Why would they? They think we're beaten, think we're coming to surrender. Aren't we? Victoria's smile was sharp as a scalpel. We're coming to make them bleed. There's a difference. They parked in the underground garage at 4:58 a.m., 2 minutes to spare. Victoria activated the streaming setup. 4 phones, 2 tablets, the camera glasses, all simultaneously broadcasting to platforms around the world. Danny would be watching, ready to download and redistribute if the streams got cut. Any last words? Nathan asked as they walked toward the elevator. Yeah, Victoria said. Don't let them take you alive. If it comes down to it, if we can't escape, we make sure they can't use us for experiments. We go out on our terms. Agreed. The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside. The ascent to the penthouse felt like rising toward judgment, toward the culmination of everything their families had fought and died for. When the doors opened on the top floor, Helena Winters was waiting, flanked by a dozen security personnel in tactical gear. Behind her, through glass walls, Victoria could see an entire floor converted into a research facility, operating theaters, monitoring stations, and in the center, Sarah Chen strapped to a table with electrodes already attached to her head. Welcome, Helena said, to the future of psychiatry. I'm so glad you could join us for the demonstration. And as Victoria stepped out of the elevator with cameras broadcasting everything to the world, she realized that the razor's edge between success and failure had never been thinner. The gamble had begun. You're live streaming, Helena said calmly, gesturing to the cameras hidden on Victoria and Nathan. How predictable. Victoria's confidence faltered. Helena wasn't surprised, wasn't panicking. She was smiling. Did you really think we wouldn't anticipate this? Helena walked toward them slowly, heels clicking on polished marble. You're not the first person to try to expose us, Dr. Blake. And every time someone attempts it, live streams, leaked documents, whistleblowers, we have countermeasures. Nathan's hand found Victoria's, squeezed once. Keep her talking. The longer we stream, the more people see. What countermeasures? Victoria asked, buying time. Simple. Helena pulled out her phone, tapped the screen.
Every major platform has content moderation algorithms, and we've spent years ensuring that certain T-words, certain types of footage, get flagged immediately as medical misinformation or graphic violence. Your streams are already being taken down, flagged, removed. Within 5 minutes, they'll be completely scrubbed from the internet. Victoria felt her stomach drop. She glanced at the phone in her pocket. The streaming indicator was still active, but for how long? "But please," Helena continued, "keep recording. It's good practice for our security team. Now, Mr. Cross, the evidence you've collected, hand it over or Miss Chen loses the ability to remember her own name." Nathan didn't move. "You're going to kill us anyway." "Kill you? No." Helena's smile widened. "We're going to improve you, remove your obsessions, your trauma, your inconvenient memories. By tomorrow, you'll both wake up believing you're different people entirely. Nathan, you'll think you're a financial analyst. Victoria, perhaps a yoga instructor. Peaceful lives, normal lives, better than what you have now." "You're insane," Victoria said. "I'm a healer." Helena's voice turned passionate. "Mental illness destroys lives, Dr. Blake. Trauma, PTSD, depression, addiction. We can eliminate all of it. We can give people clean slates. And yes, there have been complications in the early trials, but we're perfecting the process. Soon we'll be able to selectively remove only the pathological memories, leaving everything else intact." "And who decides what's pathological?" Nathan demanded. "You? Some committee of psychiatrists who think they know better than the patients themselves what memories they should keep? Someone has to make those decisions. The mentally ill can't." "My brother wasn't mentally ill," Victoria interrupted, her voice ice. "He was investigating you, and you erased his mind because he was a threat." Helena's expression flickered. Guilt, perhaps, or something like it. "Thomas was an unfortunate case. We overestimated our precision, but we learned from that mistake. The procedure is much safer now." "Safer," Victoria laughed bitterly. "You're experimenting on human beings, erasing their identities, and you call it safe? Safer than leaving them to suffer." Helena nodded to her security team. "Enough debate. Restrain them." The tactical team moved forward. Nathan tensed, ready to fight, but Victoria grabbed his arm. "Wait!" Because she'd seen something. On the monitors behind Helena, showing live feeds from various parts of the facility, one screen displayed a news broadcast, and the headline made her heart leap. "Breaking. Secret psychiatric facility live stream shows alleged human experimentation." Danny had done it. Even as the platforms took down the direct streams, he'd sent the footage to news outlets, major networks, independent journalists. The video was spreading faster than the architects could suppress.
Nathan found Victoria standing at the window, watching the sunrise paint Manhattan in shades of gold and pink. "We did it," he said quietly. "We survived," Victoria corrected. "The architects, the organization itself, that's bigger than this one facility. Helena was just one researcher. There are others." "Then we'll find them too." Nathan stood beside her, their shoulders touching. "But maybe not today. Today we breathe." Victoria thought about that. Breathing, living, existing outside the constant state of emergency that had defined her life for 5 years. "I don't know how to do that anymore." "Neither do I. Maybe we can figure it out together." She looked at him, this man who'd known her father, who'd tried to save her brother, who'd risked everything to expose the truth. "Is this the part where we ride off into the sunset, get our happy ending?" "I don't think people like us get happy endings," Nathan said. "But maybe we get something better. Maybe we get purpose and companionship and the knowledge that we made a difference." "That's very philosophical for someone who just got out of a psychiatric facility." "I'm full of surprises.
Victoria smiled, genuinely smiled, for longer than she could remember. Then her phone rang. Danny. "Vic, are you okay? I saw the FBI arrest on the news." "I'm fine. We're both fine. Danny, you did it. The footage went viral. Every major news outlet is running the story." "There's more." Danny's voice was excited. "Remember that patient from last night? The one with the electrode marks? He woke up, started talking. He's giving police the location of another architect facility in New Jersey. And he's not the only one. Patients all over the country are coming forward now that they see the news. They're not afraid anymore." Victoria felt something loosen in her chest, a weight she'd been carrying since Thomas died, since she'd fled London, since she'd convinced herself that fighting was futile. How many? At least 30 so far, with more calling in every hour. Vic, this is going to destroy the architects, all of them, not just this one facility, the entire network. When she hung up, Victoria found Nathan watching her with an expression she couldn't quite identify. "What?" she asked. "You look different, lighter somehow." "I feel different." She turned back to the window, to the city waking up below them, to the life she'd have to rebuild from the ashes of the one she'd just destroyed. "My medical license is probably revoked. My career is over. I'll likely face criminal charges for what we did last night." "Probably. But I saved Sarah, and we exposed the architects, and somewhere out there 30 patients are finding their voices again because we made them believe someone would listen." I took a deep breath, really breathed, filled her lungs completely for the first time in years. "I think that's worth it." "It is," Nathan agreed. "Your brother would think so too."
6 months later. The small clinic in Brooklyn didn't look like much. A converted brownstone with a hand-painted sign that read, "Phoenix Clinic, specializing in post-traumatic recovery." But to the patients who walked through its doors, it was salvation. Victoria sat across from her newest patient, a young woman who'd escaped from an architect facility in California, who'd been told she'd never recover the memories they'd erased. But Victoria had spent 6 months studying the neural pathways, the patterns of erasure, the ways the brain could rebuild what had been destroyed. "The memories aren't gone," Victoria explained gently. "They're suppressed, disconnected. But with the right therapy, the right triggers, we can help you access them again. It won't be easy, it might take months, but I've seen it work." The patient, Maria, 23, hollow-eyed but hopeful, leaned forward. "You really think I can remember my daughter? They said she was erased completely." "I think the human mind is more resilient than the architects ever understood. They treated consciousness like data on a hard drive, something that could be deleted. But it's not. It's complex, interconnected, capable of healing in ways we're only beginning to understand." As Maria left, clutching the therapy plan Victoria had designed, the first real hope she'd had in months, Nathan appeared in the doorway. He'd been testifying at trials all week, helping put the remaining architect operatives in prison, but he always came back here, to this clinic they'd built together from the ruins of their old lives. "How was court?" Victoria asked. "Helena Winters got 25 years, no parole." Nathan's smile was grim satisfaction. "And the judge agreed to seal the identities of all the victims who testified. They'll be protected." "Good." Victoria stood, stretched, felt the exhaustion of another 14-hour day. But it was different from the exhaustion she'd felt at the hospital. This was purposeful, meaningful. "Any word from Danny?" "He's organizing a medical conference on post-traumatic memory recovery. Wants you to be the keynote speaker." "I'm not licensed to practice anymore." "No, but you're the world's leading expert on reversing architect memory erasure. 23 patients recovered so far. That's a better success rate than any traditional psychiatrist." Victoria looked around her office, at the wall covered with thank you cards from patients, at the photograph of Thomas she'd finally been able to display, at the future she was building from the ashes of everything she'd lost. "We did it," she said softly. "We actually did it." Nathan crossed the room, pulled her into an embrace that had become familiar over the past 6 months. "We're still doing it,"
The architects, the ones who escaped prosecution, they're still out there. Then we'll find them too. Victoria pulled back, met his eyes. But not tonight. Tonight, I think we should try that thing normal people do. What's it called? Having dinner? Relaxing? Radical concepts? I'm full of radical concepts lately. They left the clinic together, walking out into the Brooklyn evening where life continued in all its messy, beautiful complexity. Victoria Blake, no longer running, no longer hiding, no longer afraid of the past that shaped her, finally ready to build a future worth living. She'd lost her medical career, lost her comfortable anonymity, lost the safe, controlled existence she'd built as armor against pain. But she'd gained something more valuable: purpose, connection, and the knowledge that some fights, the impossible, dangerous, reckless ones, were worth every sacrifice. Behind them, the Phoenix Clinic's lights glowed warm against the gathering dark. And inside, tomorrow, more patients would arrive, more lives would be rebuilt, more memories would be recovered. The architects had tried to erase the human spirit, but Victoria Blake had learned what her father and brother had known all along, that consciousness, identity, the essential self, those things couldn't be deleted, could be damaged, suppressed, fragmented, but never destroyed. Not completely. Not while someone was willing to fight for them.